Okay, most cases will come already with a plate like this one in the place, which is this plate right here. This plate right here. And most cases will come already with a plate in there. But each motherboard has its own plate. The motherboards, they come with that plate because that plate has to match the inputs and outputs of your computer. Back here, as you can see, this plate does not match this. But this plate, which is the one that I have received with the motherboard and I've already put it in place, does match this motherboard. Now, how do you put it in? Very, very easy. It's a matter of pressure, okay? When you get the case, you have the plate that's in there. All you do is press it with the thumb from this direction. In other words, from the outside in. Press it with the thumb, it pops out, and then you put the new plate with the little ridge over here. You put it in place, and then just press it with the thumb until it locks in. It's pure pressure, nothing else. And so we already have our plate in position there, not to waste time. Then the second thing you want to do is mark with the motherboard. You're going to put the motherboard in place. You know, try to handle the motherboard always. Books say that you would have to handle all the time the motherboard with a anti-static wrist. To tell you the truth, I have never done it. I never do it. I don't even own one of those wristband. But what I do though is I make sure that I touch a metal part before handling. So if I'm charged with some electrostatic charge in my body, it will, you know, it will discharge. I will actually feel the shock and it will discharge. So here we go. We're going to put this motherboard in place, which is like this. We're going to put it in place. See, I'm aligning the motherboard right here with the holes of, and in fact, right now you're going to see that these holes are lined up. You see, if I get the motherboard out and I put it back in, and there it is, the motherboard is back in place, and we verify that by looking at this detail. All of my holes are accessible and they're lined up. Okay, so once the motherboard is in place, you're going to grab a marker or a pencil. Okay, a pencil like this, for example, and you're going to see where all of the holes. The motherboard normally comes with, you know, 9, 10, 12 holes, and those holes are to secure the motherboard through the screws. Oh, by the way, this is an example. I purchased this at Radio Shack. This is an example of the thermal compound that I was talking about. I will show you later where and how we apply this. But this is a thermal compound I was talking about earlier. Now, with the pencil, you're going to make marks on every single hole in the motherboard. So once you remove the motherboard, you will see exactly where the holes of the motherboard match the holes on the case. And I will show you. Now, I'm just pretending because I've done this already, but I don't want to waste too much time in details that are very easy to understand. Now I will remove the motherboard. Okay, as I was saying, I have already inserted the spacers, but I will remove one just to show you. Okay, and if you marked your hole with a pencil, then you will find the hole that's dirty, or of graphite or ink or whatever you use to mark the hole. Otherwise, what's going to happen is when you remove the motherboard, you're going to find a whole bunch of holes on the actual case, and you won't know which one of the holes that you have to screw your spacer. This is our next step, is we're going to put a spacer on the hole that matches the holes of the motherboard. As you can see, the motherboard is full of holes. That's where we want to have a spacer. We want to have a spacer underneath those holes. This part actually does not belong here yet, but I've already put it in to show in this video, and then I will explain why. Okay, so we're gonna pop in wherever we have a mark with the pencil. We're gonna put in our little spacers, and so here we go. Put the spacer. Don't tighten down too much because they're very fragile. You know, you may break it off. And as you can see right now, I have a whole bunch of spacers put in place. But before dropping the motherboard in, you want to make sure that the cooling fan for this microprocessor is the kind that needs to have a base. We're going to put that base underneath. I will backtrack here a little bit. This is how it's going to be mounted. Okay, so what you do is you put the base. That's it. You feel it immediately when it's in place. This thing doesn't move anymore. Why? Because it has popped in here, and you just pop one here, one screw here. This is just a temporary screw, just to hold that piece in place. We'll remove that screw later. So now this little plate here doesn't move any longer. Now is when we can actually drop the motherboard in its place and secure it with all of the screws. Important thing, do not tighten any of the screw until you inserted the last one. Good, very good. Now you have a couple of choices, and that is to insert certain stuff on the motherboard before putting it in, or insert it after the motherboard is in place. I personally like to put the motherboard in place first because that secures the motherboard and makes it solid and makes it heavy, and so I prefer dropping the motherboard in and then putting in the components. So that's how I will proceed. This is the motherboard. I gently put it in place, sliding it in, and I'm looking to know that I actually have it in the correct place. I'm looking for the alignment of the hole with the spacer that I just put earlier underneath. And then I start dropping the screws. Okay, so I pop out my, it's very nice to have a screwdriver that's magnetic. And you're gonna start putting the screws in.